part of our normal process as well, what we'll do is we'll mute everybody just to avoid the background noise. But Justin's kindly said that if we've got questions at any time, if you want to use the chat function and just to message Nixie, the Joondalup Wolves, just personally, or privately, I should say, it says. That way we can answer those questions sort of at the relevant time, and Nixie will sort of open up to the person asking the question. So if you've got any questions, we want to make it as interactive as we possibly can. And like I said, Justin's been really kind in saying, look, if you've got questions, don't hesitate to ask them. So that's what he's here for, to give us as much of his knowledge as he can in a short period. So welcome, Justin, and I'll hand it over to you, mate.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys, and good day, everyone. I guess I'll start off with, like, it's an interesting world for all of us, but my world is I'm a full-time assistant coach in Melbourne United, and then part-time head coach with Geelong in NBL1 and the Australian Crocs, the under-17 men. And right now, I'm going into the thought process that it's going to be 18 months without head coaching, which is an interesting sort of period. And I guess the things that I've been trying to do right now is, well, how can I keep my mind going in that head coaching thought process? And definitely getting opportunities to do this and talk hoops and have a chat has been a big part of staying as sharp as possible in this time. As mentioned, like, any questions as we go along, please yell out. Ryan just asked me to kind of talk about when we had the group of kids come over and be a part of our program, our Melbourne United program. I think, when was that? Probably mid last year or back in the last year. We went through some offensive principles and just some things that apparently is relevant to what you guys are doing as well. So where I want to go is we'll go into that area and just look at some different things that we're doing from a Melbourne United point of view. But I guess everything that I'm talking about is where I go in every team that I'm involved with. So my background, the long story short, from Adelaide, went down to Tassie, ran the Institute of Sport program down there for 5.5 years, and then came across to Victoria and was with Basketball Victoria's high performance program on the countryside. And through that period of time, Andre Lamanis was our national team head coach and influenced our style of play and also our offensive system of play, which was flow based. And that's something that I've been heavily invested in now for about 10 years time. Then Dean Vickerman asked me to come on board with him at Melbourne United, and that's Andre's assistant from the past. And so Dino is very flow based sort of offensive principles as well. And the interesting part is, while Dean's worked in that system for 10 plus years, I've worked in that system for 10 plus years. It's about the differences and the ways that we try and mold that to whatever groups we have at that given time. So there's going to be some stuff that I talk about that's probably really bang on relevant. And then there's going to be stuff that you just go, the person that I'm working with, that's not where we're at. But what I encourage is just keep trying to massage and find what works within the structures that you guys have put in place. I'll try and screen share now. Now, this sometimes works beautifully and sometimes works dismally. So just let me know if it's, are we good to go there? Everyone's got that? Beautiful. So I'll get through the boring stuff here of the actual stuff I've just gone through. So what I wanted to start off with was team principles and just some different thoughts and I guess some stuff that we've been building over a long period of time as to how we want our teams to think and operate. So one of the foundations, and heavily with our Crocs team, our under-17s team, where it's a real short prep, but we've got to get the athletes' basketball IQ to the highest point as quick as possible, is to teach the game in two ways. One is it's a game of opposites. So whatever we're trying to do offensively, we're absolutely going to try and take that away defensively. So whatever schemes we've got in place, we're going to try and two-way teach that straight away. But coupling with that is an understanding of winning the free-point game wins, and that's free as in F-R-E-E, not with the T and a stutter. So what I mean by that is we need to be able to get to the foul line more than our opponent, and we have to be able to convert better than them from a percentage point at the end of the game. We also want that per quarter. If we're trending in a good position with that, we'll be in good shape. And this will formulate a few things as we go along. Points off turnovers, we want to absolutely win that area, and second chance points. So at the end of each quarter, at the end of the ball game, we should be able to look at those three areas and say, if we win all three categories in that, we're pretty confident we're coming away with the win on the game. Building that IQ from that point of view to say, all right, no matter who we play, whether it's Ballarat in the NBL 1, whether it's Perth Wildcats in the NBL, whether it's Turkey in a World Cup, that philosophy needs to be a consistent, that our athletes understand that that's something we're trying to achieve. Within that philosophy comes, well, how we go about things. And we'll talk about a few of them throughout this. The other principle that I use in every team that I've ever worked with is runs of stops to couple with runs of good shots. We always talk about the run of three. So those that are avid 10-pin bowlers out there, not that anyone's been able to do that for a fair while now, but 3 strikes, it's called a turkey. That's what we call them as well. And one thing we've got going with that is once a group gets 2 stops in a row, the bench is into it. They're calling out turkey. So we're coupling that to try and get that 3rd stop in a row and build our defensive system from there. For us, if we get to 8 turkeys in a game, that generally equates to a win for us. I don't think that I've had a game in my lifetime where we haven't been able to get a victory off 8 turkeys. But to pair with that needs to come the ability to have good shots. Now, that's different for every group we work with. And what that often can be is what a good shot for our Melbourne United group is sometimes isn't the same good shot for our Crocs guys at an under 17 level. What I mean by that is there's a foundation. So, for example, in transition, I'm very heavy on ball in the paint before a 3 goes up. So I believe collapsing the D before we find a 3. So kick out 3s are big in our system. That said, if we're coaching Chris Goulding and he's running down the wing and the ball gets kicked ahead to him, he has a little bit of a more green light to launch that thing before it goes in the paint. So we're going to play to our personnel's strengths within our rules, but every team understands what our good shots are. And as a staple, there's always 3: layups, free throws, and uncontested perimeter shots. So whatever our offensive structures are at any time, that's what we're trying to generate from there. Already hit the game of opposites. The example I give there is, for me, getting through the nail on the floor is absolute paramount to us having success with our offensive system. So therefore, from a defensive point of view, we absolutely want to defend that. The reason I believe it's imperative is getting through the nail, to me, generates those kick-out 3s, generates long closeouts. We put teams into rotation. That's the key point on the floor, to me, that's going to cause some problems for opponents. So flip that. Well, if we're going to be great at defending the 3-point line, part of that is not having to get into rotation and have to overhelp and commit to the ball. So being able to be great at that, that's where that game of opposite mentality comes to. The other part is we're huge on promoting we over me. And I hate to say it, the boys in Perth with the Wildcats, that's a team that definitely gets it. And it doesn't mean that your studs aren't going to be taking more shots than someone else. But what it does mean is that stud that's getting the shot understands that shot's being generated by the great screen by Nick Kay or by the extra pass that's been made by Mitch Norton to create the shot. So having that understanding that we want to be a good for great team, I'm willing to give up my good look for something that's better and going to have a better outcome for us. The final one there is offensive team principle is built around 3s and free throws. So a little story on that one is when I took over Tassie, to me, it was, how do we become competitive at a national championship? That was my one thought. And at the time, at the World Championships, Slovenia, which is a nation of 2 million people, I think, around now, had won a medal at a World Cup against all these huge powerhouse nations. And I'm thinking, how does it work for them? The free throw line and the 3-point line, they were ranked 1 and 2 in, I can't remember which categories, but in each of them, they were either first or second in that tournament. And that was just a light bulb moment for myself. And so then for me, it was like, oh, we've just got to be the best 3-point shooting team from any state around Australia. And we built everything we did on that premise. And we were fortunate in my time down there to have a number of top 4 finishes and a couple bronze and silver medals in that time, but also individual athletes that have gone on to have pretty good careers. Tanner Krebs being one of those kids at that time that, you know, for St. Mary's this past year was one of their leading 3-point shooters. The other part to that is in got to remember my years now, 2014, with our Australian national team, we had a really successful group. You know, Dejan Vasilovic, Jack White, who else is in that? Harry Froling, Quat Noy, Isaac Humphries, a really talented group of athletes. We won the silver medal with that group, but again, for us, we were #1 in the world from free throw percentage and #2 in the world from 3-point percentage. So again, it was about, another light bulb moment to me that in the teams that I'm working with, those 2 areas have mattered most from us being able to generate some success. Are there any questions on any of that stuff, guys? All good?
Yeah, no questions just at this point. Yeah.
Cool. Just yell out if they are.
Don't hesitate to ask questions, guys. Honestly, this is about your learning as much as you've got a question that relates to anything sort of stuff. Please don't hesitate to send them through.
So while I'm talking about offense tonight, I wanted to start with our defensive principles here as well, because again, that game of opposite mentality and trying to get an understanding, I guess, as to why we play our offense the way we do. We break our D into 3 parts. So disruption, contain and contest, and hustle. Disruption for us is what are we going to do in the first 8 seconds of D to be able to be as pesky as possible and take them out of their rhythm. So we've seen, you know, the Spurs clip from a few years back where the ball's moving around. There's such a beautiful rhythm to it and it's fluent. To me, disruption is about, well, how can I stop it from ever getting to that point? So that might be that if they've only got 1 ball carrier on the floor, we're going to deny that ball carrier the inbound and make someone else lead the offense. It's where we pick the ball up. It's where we channel the ball. So for us, we're heavy channel down the side because as an offensive group, we want to be able to play through the middle of the floor and get our feet in the paint. So again, game of opposites, we're going to take that away. When it gets to, and disruption's about just using dribbles. So the more dribbles they use, the more seconds off the clock, the better chance we've got to be able to just be a better chance of getting into our contain contest component of our D. When I talk contain and contest, that's relevant to the diagram that's up here now, which is what we call just push points. And I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen this stuff before, but again, when you look at where the pentagon forms, that's where we were trying to channel the basketball to it every time. So if I flip the screen a little bit, actually I'll stop sharing for a moment because this is probably one where, can everyone see that one okay? So if I've got a push point there, a push point there, and a push point there, if I'm defending out in the high slot point, individual scout can come into this at some point in time, but the relativity right now is, yep, we don't have an individual scout, we're just playing straight up. My goal is to try and channel that basketball to the closest push point possible. So that could be either east or west. Now, if they penetrate and cut through that push point, my goal is to send it to the next push point. If they dribble and get through that one, my goal is to send it to the next push point, and so on and so on. So for our athletes, it's always about just trying to steer it as far out of the paint as possible. If it's a post player, the rules are exactly the same. So we've got our push point spots, like so. They catch on the block. We start sending them to the middle. For whatever reason, we know they're not good over their right shoulder, left hand. Angus Brandt, for you Wildcat people. We want to send that thing going towards the middle. Well, first point is we want to send it up as high as we can on it. Now they cut through that push point. Well, now we're trying to send it out as far. Now, if they get below that, well, now we're trying to send it out as far. So again, it's just a reference point for our athletes, and our defense is built around trying to make sure we're the aggressors. I think too many times, and this was definitely a fault of mine in the past at a junior level, where contain and contest for me meant we don't want to be the aggressor. We just want to stay in front, cushion enough, allow us to have the best chance to be between the ball and the basket. Over time, where my mindset's gone with that is if we can be the aggressor, I feel we're in a much better position to now be able to achieve what we want from our push point D. So with that, what I'm saying is, I'm not sure if you guys have seen the stuff that BA put out a few years back, but chest blows, being the aggressor on that element, we're heavy on that. We'll work on that every single practice. It'll be part of either our dynamic warm-up, or it's in part of practice for us from a fundamental development point of view. We're hitting that every day, where we're just trying to be great at hitting first. Go meet the ball, steer them to where we want to go. Where I learned that most was in international play. My first tournament overseas, and the Euros are just driving us out of court with their bodies. Hands are out, no dramas, but they're just being as physical as possible. And then again, another light bulb moment where it's like, well, we're telling our guys to sit off and contain, where they're the other way, just getting into our bodies and steering us where they want us to go. So that's where we tried to flip our mindset on that one. And jump back into this. The last component of it is what we call hustle, and that's just about, again, making sure we stay in front of the ball. So that might be we're switching at that point. It might be that hustle means, if the ball goes into the post, it's a danger team in the post. It may mean we're blitzing at that point. It can mean from week to week something different. But absolutely what it means is we're not fouling in that situation, and we're hitting bodies and finishing the play. So too many times, late clock, and again, game of opposites, our offense is designed to try and get downhill or put defense in a shitty position at that moment. But we want to be making sure at no cost that we're putting people to the line in the last 8 seconds of offense. I'll skip the rebound and go and clap back. That's not as relevant for this one. So just shift that over. So now we're getting into the offensive side of the ball. And again, this is a style of play that's been Basketball Australia driven for a while, but this has got, I guess, what I feel is my personal or our personal flavour on how we do things. First 8 seconds for us is, we call it pace. You'll hear me yelling pace on the side. But what that means for us is we just want to play quick. And what I had on there before about rebounding, going clap back, Ross McMains and Paul Hanari have been assistants with us at Melbourne United the last couple of years with the New Zealand Tall Blacks. And something that they were huge on, and you would have seen in the last World Cup, is their closest man just getting that ball, inbounding and going. Didn't care about who inbounded it, just wanted it back in. And they called that a clap back. So what we're trying to encourage to our guys is, whether the ball goes through the net or not, we're trying to come back down as quick as we can and basically get our own celebration the other way. Don't drop your head. Don't step out of court slow on that one and inbound and go with it. Like, we've got to be able to clap back. We've got to be able to put them on their heels as quick as possible. What that also does is, from an opposite point of view, is it helps remove disruption. So now you can't take our best ball carrier out of bringing it up, because we're not worrying about that. You can't get into your traps because, well, we're getting it in quicker than you can set up. So having that element of just being able to try and play as quick as possible in that first 8 seconds. The other element that's absolutely vital for me in that period, though, is we're looking for numbers advantages. So at any point, if we can just 5-on-4, 4-on-3, 3-on-2, 2-on, whatever it might be, if there is a numbers advantage, we're going to keep the foot on the gas and keep pushing forward. The second that numbers advantage breaks off, well, now we've got to make decisions, and basketball IQ has to come into it. But in that initial part, it's find the numbers advantage. The way we do that best, we play off kick aheads. So we heavily promote throwing the ball ahead versus dribbling it ahead. And we're looking for layups and threes. So again, layups the first thought for us, try and get in the paint to draw fouls. And the point I'll touch on there from a foul point of view, so one of my personal coaching philosophies is we use our trans or our flow-based offense until we draw 3 team fouls, and then for the next 2 fouls, we're going to get into our sets and basically go into our pick-on plays for that week. So whatever we've figured out an advantage against who we're playing, we've seen some sort of weakness and we feel that we've got a bit of an advantage on. Well, once we get to 3 team fouls, we're going to just start hammering that and really try and milk either a foul situation or go pick on the weakest link on the floor at that given time. So if we're coming down and launching the first 3, and again, if Chris Goulding's on that wing for me, he can launch it all he wants. But if it's someone else that isn't at that 40% three-point percentage, well, now we're saying you must try and get your feet in the paint, try and draw contact or collapse the D, because the rest of our system's built around if you see 2, you must give up the pass. You must find whoever's open on that. Once pace component's gone or numbers advantage is gone, so it's not, all right, now it's the 9th second of offense and now we're into poise. What it means, we've got to have a feel for the game. So, yep, we haven't been able to test anything out in that first 8 seconds. Yep, they've got numbers back. Now we need to move the ball. And whatever offensive actions we're in, our movement is purely about trying to force 2 things, either 2 to the ball, or we're just trying to get them into as much of a rotation and closeout as possible. So we feel if we can force them into 2 long closeouts, we're going to be able to generate whatever shot we want late in clock, which then gives us our advantage to where we want to go. So ball movement makes the defense play and try and just find some advantages in that moment. Our penetration point is kind of the point I was trying to make before about we don't want to foul in the last 8 seconds. For us, it's about we want to put either our head on the rim, we're throwing it into the post, we're trying to find a mismatch advantage, or we're milking whatever we feel is our pick on at that given moment. And it's about either generating one of our great shots that we're comfortable with, or generating a foul and trying to put defense at a disadvantage. The last bit there, what we call pillars, and again, I'll get off screen, share for a second.
Just Justin, before you get onto that next bit, Tomo, did you want to ask that question that you had?
Yeah, mate. Just in relation to the first part, and this is something that's pretty pertinent with what we find, particularly with juniors. If you're just cold shooting team, you just can't get anything in the hole. That first part, the first 8 seconds when we're playing with pace, do you still advocate that even though some shots are going up that might be considered bad shots or anything like that? Or is any shot in that first 8 seconds still considered a good shot, do you think?
It's a great question. Like, to me, we try and be process driven 100% of the time. And as coaches, that's always, there's difficult moments with that, right? Where it's like, yeah, our best shooter's cold, or we just can't get our feet in the paint or whatever. But to us, we keep trying to generate a process point on that. So my first answer would be, no, absolutely, we stay the course. At the same time, though, our jobs are to provide a success for our team. So there may be something within that where we start triggering more of our cutting action at that moment in time off the backside, or something that gives us something a little bit easier to generate a positive outcome. One of the things in my time spent with Luke Longley that I found a real valuable thing is when things aren't going good, throw it into the big man. Like, he was pretty adamant that you throw it in there, something good will come. And I guess what I've found over time is when we haven't been able to generate good shots or play off the bounce and create good shots, bringing the post to the ball, which is something we don't do as a staple rule, but that has also been a good way to just give ourselves a little bit of a different rhythm, generate some more purpose with our offense, but then also put the defense at still at the disadvantage we're looking to try and generate.
And is that a mindset thing as well? Obviously, keeping people, particularly in a fourth quarter when people particularly young kids get a little bit tentative, as a way of sort of that intrinsic motivation to the kids to keep playing with pace and being aggressive as opposed to getting tentative if they've got a bit of a lead?
Yeah, I think that one's kind of, to me, relevant to your group.
Yep.
So if you know your group's kind of gets into those safe moments that I call it, where they start getting a little hesitant, to me that's a great time to start. All right, well, we know that we need to get feet in the paint 10 times a quarter. Right now we've only got 6. Like, having something that removes the result but still has a something that they're chasing, so to speak. You know, whereas I'm fortunate with the groups that I'm working with that we probably don't have to generate that piece. We kind of know what we're getting regardless of the scenario. But that to me is something that, yeah, personnel and individual groups wise, I think that's something to definitely monitor.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
No worries. What I was going to get to is, like, so we have pretty clear-cut offensive rebounding rules for us, and this is with Melbourne United or with you know, what we do with the Crocs or with my Geelong group. So 4 and 5 for us are 100% of the time to glass, so they're automatic on it. Whoever the shooter is in the corner, so all of our offense will generally get to spacing where we end up with at least one person in a corner on the floor. Generally, let's say that's the 3 right now. Their responsibility on the rise of the shot would be to tag up through the elbow and see whatever they can get long, and then start getting back to D-Trans responsibilities. The other wings or guards, and you know, we're almost at a point now where we're 1 through 4 are pretty interchangeable. But let's say it is the 1 and 2, wherever they are on the floor, they're sprinting into what we call pillar spots. And the pillar is just basically in the slot. And the reason we do that is twofold. One, say a 5-man rebounds it, they're square to the rim. Well, we absolutely want them to be able to put the ball straight back up and get into their shot as quick as possible, try and draw a foul, finish the play. But if their shoulders are out towards the sideline or back towards the center line, we want them to know that they've got 2 shooters flying to that spot and they can go connect on that. And again, that's, you know, with Chris Goulding, we want him running to those spots every single time, trying to just generate a quick early 3 off the offensive rebound. If that breaks down for me, then we just get to spread pick and roll. So now again, it's just about the last 8 seconds of our offense, our penetration component, where we're trying to get feet in the paint and find shooters. So just a little element there from an offensive rebounding point of view. A D-Trans falls into the back of that. So, you know, generally speaking, at an international level, at an NBL level, NBL 1 is a little bit different depending who we're playing, but we will generally send 2.5 back. So that 3-man on that diagram, they've got a green light to make that decision, get through the elbow, but they're either going for the rebound if they think they can get it, or they just straight away get them back because they know we've identified it's a team that loves to play in transition. You know, the Sixers under Joey, we would always just have that guy really start sprinting back versus getting through that elbow to go get the rebound unless it was an absolute gimme. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. Next slide here. So I'm hoping these videos kind of work okay. Now this is with my Geelong group, which is my first year coaching them. So everything we were doing was brand new, and I promise you these clips look like it too. We only were together kind of 3-4 weeks until the season got cancelled, but I'll let these play. So, and I'll try and talk to it. Oh, how can I get rid of that? All right, that's just really poor by me. Sorry about that. So this first one here. So when we're talking the pace element, so oh God, this is gonna. I'm trying to sports code and it's not there. Nikawusu tries to get into the paint for us. We don't have a numbers advantage, but we've drawn 2. So we're able to find a designated shooter, Dexter Kernich-Drew. We're able to go with it. Just on the edge of the key feet in the paint, we're able to find our shooter on that one. As in receiver spots here, if I can go just marginally back, and this will come into relevance when we get into the next parts, we always want to empty the post. when I'm head coaching, that is, Dino is more than happy to let bigs trace to the post. When we had Josh Boone, we would let him because he was such a good passer out of it. Obviously, with Sean Long, dominant scorer with it. But for me, what in my groups, what we've tried to do is generate as much space by emptying the post to be able to generate good uncontested shots from there. So you'll see in this one, as the penetration goes, well, now we're getting our wheeling action. He's emptied, but he's getting to his receiver spot underneath. We've got our deep corner field. We've got our diagonal flying in. Some pretty good spacing. And again, not perfect numbers advantages. So we weren't at the point in these early days of getting that really good basketball IQ, but we were really good at figuring out, I can draw two on this play and still create an advantage. So that was the next layer that came pretty quick with this group. Paint to kick out three. Just looking at our trans stuff now. So when I talk about emptying the post, our rules are rim run, bigger head, we want to rim run. Absolutely want to rim run and try and see if we can test that out as one of our kick ahead moments. But if they can't get to that, empty out. We do have a degree of offense where if they're late to the trail, so we've got two bigs in late trail, well, then we can pin away or come to drag in that sense. But generally speaking, let's say our 5-man's down first, we always want to generate a drag screen with a corner empty through our 4-man and get to our receiver spot principles, which I know you guys are doing at the club. So our one rule that I've added over time is if we don't get the kick ahead, we tend to try and play more than not off a bit of a handoff action at the wing, or they're pushing through straight away. So while our spacing and our shape, we're still getting two wings running down to the break, but then we've got two different ways that we can still get into our action and our triggers. One thing that the clinic I did last night was with Ettore Messina's assistant coach at AC Milan, and they were talking about, they basically run flow almost exactly the same way that I do. They were talking about this drag screen, making sure it was always below the foul line. And they just felt it gave them a better chance to reject screens and go get layups off that, which is something that it definitely triggered some thought for me. I've never been as pedantic with it. I've kind of always just allowed the players to determine what they need to do in this moment. Do they need to take it a bit deeper because someone's in their jocks, or is it quicker movement for them because they can get to the drag earlier? If they keep it high, get more downhill, go and attack the nails. So I'm not sure where I'm at with that one. That only hit me last night, but just some food for thought there. As we roll off, so we call this first side offense. So this is still part of pace for us. Even though numbers advantage is gone, if we can create a number advantage off the ball screen, we want to keep playing relatively quick at this moment in time. I've got to remember which clip's which. I think this is, so we're now into pitch game. We've been able to get through the nail. We're in a pace element. We've created a numbers advantage and overcommit. We've found the shooter in the corner. Oh, that is terrible by me. Here it is again in real time. So really poor defense. Trust me, I know it. Don't have to tell me. But really good offense, right? Like, you know, offense is only as good as what the D looks like anyway. So penetration to kick out, good receiver spots on the backside, and hopefully you start seeing some of that pillar action as rebounds start getting into play. Not on this one. So that was just kind of where we're at on in regards to first side offense there. What was that skipped ahead? Sorry guys, I'm driving this like I haven't driven for 8 weeks in isolation.
Justin, just before you move on, we've just had a question. So just on that drag screen, you always send the strong side corner through to the opposite side. Is that just to create the space for that pick and roll action?
Pretty much, like trying to create some sort of advantage early. A big reason I've done it with my teams is because of what occurs in the leagues that I'm coaching those in. So NBL 1 level, still a heavy amount of shows in that league, which we feel, if we move it on quick enough, we can create the advantage on that. Likewise, internationally, it was either a switch or a show. So, again, we can generate some sort of advantage if we get that early drag, whether we roll in, if it's a switch and a mismatch, roll in the big in and play. With Melbourne United, we will corner fill. And the only times that I would really encourage the corner to hold is when we know a team's going to come out aggressive against us. So if it's a team that we've scouted, that we know out of timeouts they like to blitz, well, we'll tell the guys, all right, on this next one, hold in the corner and try and generate some diver lifter opportunities. So we've got 2 short passes and can hurt them that way. So there are moments where we will. With United, we're more than happy for the guys to make basketball reads. For me, I've just always preferred emptying it out. And again, it was interesting in the chat last night that they religiously will as well for similar reasons, but more about they've got Sergio Garcia as their point guard, so they just want to give him as much space to operate and pick apart the D. So I think it is relevant to what your personnel is as to what you do.
Awesome, thank you.
Getting to second side here, and I've got a number of different clips with it, but on this one, it's just some good timing and rhythm. So I'll try and pull it back a little bit. Is the footage working okay? It's been all right?
Yeah, no, it's working quite well, mate.
All right, beautiful. So as we're coming down, this is where we've generated a handoff. So the guards, instead of clearing out, have come back on that. We just want to get some sort of pistol action every once in a while. And part of our offense is just being sneaky. Like the longer that we're in a rhythm and the defense is saying the same thing, well, we feel we're much easier to defend. So we want to be sneaky sometimes with how we play. So mixing that ability up on that strong on that first side is pretty important to what we want to do. Nothing changes from there. Like our guards' decision right now should be trying to get through the elbow and attack the nail as best as possible. But again, it's emptied out. Oh, you're kidding. Apologies again. So now he's attacking, defense has collapsed. We shifted through the big, and the rhythm and timing on that second side is pretty important. Now, we were at the phase where we were just playing to try and generate rhythm in our offense. So where we want to get to is there's basketball reads happening on this side of the floor, which I'll show in that next slide that conveniently keeps popping up for us. But what we were, as a default setting, we would back cut and play dribble pitch on the second side as a way to just make defense have to shift. So as we so as it rolls, you see the timing here with back cut. We get a little rub screen there. We've designated that there's a shot opportunity. This falls into one of our good shots. We've had paint penetration off that first ball screen. Now, that's a grey area. We didn't get too deep on it, but we have tested the paint. Now we've shifted it. We would say that that's a green light opportunity from there. Third side look. So what we're trying to generate on this one is just multiple closeouts. So you'll see the big checking high-low. That's something we want to religiously look at off that reversal if we haven't been able to check where we've come from. And that's probably something to share with my ball screen usage rules. I want our players to check where they're going, to check where they came from, and then to check what's on the weak side of the floor. I prefer that order of 3 just so that they stay the aggressors, that our first action's a real action. I find if I don't have that order, then we ending up east-west way too much. So just trying to get that thought process that it's on me initially. I'm evaluating that. Now I'm checking where I've come from to see what opportunity I've got there. Now I'm checking where I'm going to play from that. But yeah, in this one here, just looking for multiple looks. So again, back cut, we get our dribble pitch. So we're testing and evaluating off that. Little clunky here, we get our movement. So on the third side, we would want something that's prescribed offense. And there's different counters we would use on that front, whether we go to shallows, back to middle ball screen, whether we get to a guard-to-guard screen for a shooter, which I think is what we do on this one, to just keep finding opportunity from that. This here is with my Kilsyth side. So this is where I coached Kilsyth the last 3 years in NBL 1. So same offensive principle, first side, but this time it's on a second side, prescribed offensive action, which is what we call shallow, just getting back to middle ball screen and finding pick and pops from that. We didn't win this year, that's why this shot misses. Last one here is just the Boomers doing it the way it's meant to go. I couldn't find, half of my hard drives are in my office that's locked up due to COVID, but I found a good clip for you. So same outcome that we're looking for. Quick reversal here. Joey goes up on the shallow catch. Misdirection by Bainesy. So quick little shift. We've shifted the D. It's really hard for them to load up the nail. It's really hard for them to have a low man that can plug the paint. And of course, I've just done that. You guys will never want me back on this. Here we go. So the timing and the rhythm, this is exactly what it should look like. So now we've generated an advantage, collapse the D, find your shooter. So again, I believe everything that you guys are doing is about that spacing and generating receiver spots on the backside. Just some examples of kind of what we've used, and you're seeing the best at it there of how you can keep shape and space and movement to still generate those same outcomes on the backside. Any questions on that stuff, guys? Good?
Haven't had anything come through yet.
Beautiful. I'll try and let this one just roll so I don't keep stuffing it up for you. But now this is just the different reads that we would promote as to the why. So where we want to get to with our flow is the athlete actually making the decision versus us prescribing to them every time what's going on. So for us, when we see guard switch outs, we want to get to those shallow actions that you just saw. So here, Chris is coming up to the top. We've seen the advantage. Now we're getting high-low with spacing on the backside on that one. Versus top locks. So anytime that, for us, Chris gets this a lot, where they're just trying to stop him from coming up to the top of the floor. I mean, you guys would have watched Bryce and Tarico probably play against that more than not as well. What we tend to do is what we call a big screen. So you'll see on this side of the floor, as the back cut occurs, Chris will come up and actually set the screen for Dave Barlow here. We've always had fours that can handle and create for themselves. So we call these just big screens. And again, it's a read that the second that they see Chris sees Glidden go into a top lock, well, then he just pushes his man into his teammate and generates that opportunity and advantage. The other thing we've used is what we call double backdoors or doubles. Of course you did. So as the ball gets moved on to Josh Boone here, you'll see first cutter from the high guard spot. Mitch Norton gets into a top block. So now I think it's Bubbles. Chris Goulding uses that to his advantage, and we set pin downs for that. What should be happening on the backside here is flare screens by Mitch McCarron down here for Casper. So he should be flying up, setting that. So we now get 2 scoring opportunities on both sides of the floor. So whenever we see the wing sit off, we want to get into wing dribble handoff. Now, the interesting part of this, we couldn't get to that this year with our group that we had at United. It just wasn't with our personnel. Mello was too ball dominant, had too much of a good ability to come off that wing and generate his own offense. Where in this year, we just had more guys that were willing to let that ball move to get to late offense, where this year we were much better in the first 8 seconds of offense. So you'll see in this clip here, as they sit off on that backside a bit, we get into handoff. So Booney to Casper here. And then Josh will continue on down for a pin down where Chris can now make reads. He can curl that. We can come back and play what we call gets game. So passing cut action with Casper and Josh. We can hit the shooter off this. We can get Booney slipping hard to the rim, which I think is the outcome on this one. Yeah. So we're generating offense again through our action. On the back end of this as well, what should be happening, like Dave's obviously tired here, but he should be flying to the corner, always getting to a dead corner. So we've got someone as a receiver ready to catch and shoot, which again, I think is a bit of a staple for you guys too. So wing denial actions now. So you'll see this on the third side of offense here. So DJ Kennedy sees the Randalls up into Casper. So what we will see here is Casper flare off for the three. What I've really liked to do with this is just make our guys curl hard off this. And you would have seen the Kings do a fair bit of that this year, where they would actually run Casper hard to the rim off this one. And the same should be happening by Moller for the part of Mitch McCarron on the backside. But DJ here sets a little flare, which then generates some separation for him to get into ball screen and keep our shape and space going the same way that we would want. On this clip here, so this is from our semi-final series this year that stopped us from playing you guys. We should have, we still were dirty on this game, but where we got to is we wanted to generate some prescribed movement this year. So we ended up calling this early. And again, this is off a wing denial, but what you'll see is Chris just fly hard on the back cut and come for a shot on the second side, the third side of offense. So Mitch McCarron here reverses the ball, get back cut, you're into your dribble pitch. So now, oh, you're kidding. I was so confident on that one, guys. There we are. So now as Sean's about to catch the ball, you'll see Macca come set a little pin down and generate that shot for Chris here. We found that was almost our most effective. We made that an early call. We called it early, but just our most effective way to make sure that we put defense into so many different situations this season. The last one I wanted to show is what we call boomerang, where we've generated a switch or a mismatch and how we want to go and attack it. And this was again from last year, where you'll see pretty early here as Barlow gives the handoff to Casper, they switch Ty Wesley onto him pretty early. So Casper will just throw the ball straight back to Barlow and generate space. And what we're trying to do is achieve his play off the bounce here. To straight back to him. You'll see them try and scram out. They try and bring Schueller back to him. But that's just an example of what boomeranging looks like. I don't think that's a clip right now, is it? No, we're back to the start. Cool.
Just just on that one. Obviously, we've got a few coaches for different levels and different age groups. I think the flow and the concepts that we're looking at here, if you had to break it down a little bit further, say to under 12, particularly girls age group, for example, still trying to have I guess a lower basketball IQ than what you're dealing with. How would you sort of teach that to girls offense? What would be the main focus points to ensure that at least run and understand the concepts of a bit of freedom?
Yeah, beautiful. So when I was with Big Country, we implemented some basics of flow from our, what we call a Jamboree program, which is exactly under 12s. And what we tried to generate there was, one, get an understanding that the spacing wasn't about generating three-point shots, it was about generating space. So get your feet behind the three-point line to be able to open up penetration opportunity. The second part was we just lived in back cut handoff world. So we felt that was enough to get them some understanding of motion principles. So this is why I would back cut, because I'm getting denied on the wing. That's a scoring cut for me. Now the handoff, well, once I've received that, there's one to the rim, one away. So now I've got to make my reads on that. And keep trying to build basketball IQ that way. The danger at that age group is you just go east-west and you never get downhill. So trying to find some avenues to be able to generate that within whatever your specific group's got is pretty important. But we ended up having some pretty good success with them. One of the first, the girls that won gold in Townsville, I think it was, they were the first group that we took through from like, they got a touch point at a bottom age 14s, that group was. And by the time they got to like 16s and 18s, it was just the basketball reads they made were probably far superior to whatever we really thought they would probably get to, which was, I really believe that we gave them that foundation at such an early point.
Yeah, no, excellent. That's one of our fears, is going from something that's obviously a lot of making and reads becoming too robotic. Some of our coaches giving too much information for girls, particularly under our 12 age groups, if they have to go to point A to B to C, and the kids freak out because point player B isn't open for them to get that pass or that move to. So allow them to make their own reads, even though it's going to lead to more mistakes and more chaos, is such an important learning tool for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've had this conversation a lot with people that will try and say, well, flow's a system, like it is an A plus B equals C. But to me, flow is just a foundation for motion principles. So to me, basketball still overrides everything in that system and movement pattern. Your receiver spots are your receiver spots. So at any point, if anyone rejects, well, diver, drift, dunker, like all those spots have to be filled. If there's an interaction between two players, well, our motion principles of one to the ball, one away still have to come into play and have those decisions. So I think it's we can get kind of caught up too much in the actions that I showed there. 100%, that's over a long time of being able to make reads, and I just think it's important to know the why. But basically, the why that we need our athletes to understand is, when I'm denied, I've got to be able to create separation and keep the ball moving. If I've got the ball, I've got to be able to make a good decision. And to me, the foundation decision is, if it's one-on-one, really it should be on me to be able to generate some sort of good outcome. If I see two, well, then my job's done. Like, I've drawn two defenders, now I've got to move the ball and find what's open. And if that can be a foundation within flow principles, then I think the thing works beautifully. And I'm coming from a world where with Crocs, we may get, like, there's every chance that they say, yep, Worlds is on in August. Here's a 2-day camp, go and win a gold medal. And so, well, how quick can you generate IQ and consistency within a group with that? And that's another reason where I've always felt this has kind of worked in our favour. When you've got limited prep time, but you're able to actually, just have a foundation and then blend it to what works best for the athletes that you've got. Two great WA athletes I had was Luke Jackson and Luke Travers. Those two, just had between all that hair they've got, they just knew what each other were going to do. So there were times I didn't give them rules in our flow. It was like, you guys just make your own reads. Whatever you're feeling works for you. And they were unbelievable at just having that good interaction with each other.
Yep. Excellent, mate. Thanks for that. Nixie, did you want to go ahead, or do you want to wait to the end for that question?
That's kind of all I was going to present on. So fire away, guys. Like, anything that you want to ask, fire away.
All right.
Unless there's something else you want me to present.
No, I think that's been fantastic to this point. We've just had a question come through about flow in juniors and other offences that are that aren't just 5-out motion. How would you recommend kids don't get pigeonholed in positions? Obviously, large kids, they tend to get thrown in the paint with juniors. And with flow, you generally have two post players, so you got your 4 and your 5, and they sort of interchange with consistent movement patterns. Do you just get all players to learn and get experience in all positions, or do you think that the motion of the offense provides enough of that?
I do believe the flow is a great one to let bigs be able to get other skill sets. So, the ability to have to slide out and have to be able to play off the bounce and make passing decisions, I think that is a real positive. I guess the thing I'll draw up is one thing that as we're coming down the floor, like, if at a junior level, I really like promoting that anyone can grab the ball and go. So if I flip it that way, so let's say this time it's a 3-man rebound, then it's about first to spots. So if my 1-man's already leaked out, but they're the first one down, we can promote them to rim run and get out because we're emptying the post. We're not running it to be a post up. We can go with it. Then if our 5-man's next, well, they've got to get to a wing. So that spot's taken. So now I've got to fill the next spot. So now they're getting down to the break that side. Next, it might be my 2-man's been sitting out here. So he's sprinting to there. And then my 4 gets down to where I want them to so we can get into our shape. The first part of any flow offense should be just your receiver spots. And what, we've always called split kick extra and just keep it at that. So now, who did I say had the ball on the break? 3-man's put it out. Well, our rule is kick ahead. So now the 2-man's got it. Well, your job is to penetrate. Well, 1-man's out there now. That was my 5. My 4 is high. My 3 drags behind. And now we're into our receiver principles, and we can keep playing from there. You might have a rule that your diagonal is always the diver. Well, in this case, then, all right, your 5-man's now in the dunker spot, and you've been able to generate the same shape and play. I hope you guys can see that well enough to try to pick a good marker. But I think that's a way to keep generating that thought process around you're not pigeonholed to a position, you're not pigeonholed to a skill set. There's an element to it. There is a part, though, where then you've got to try and find what the strengths of each individual is and try and set them up for success as well. So then you might actually shape that rhythm as they come down the floor when it's organized chaos, for a better use of a word. But then you might say, all right, well, on the second pass of the ball, now we're falling into this shape, and then you get guys to play to their strengths. But that to me has been just a quick and easy way to make sure that, everyone's been able to evolve on everything. And then obviously within the flow, if it is like you've got a designated 4, you've got a designated 5, having the ability to have them on their slides is pretty important. But then also finding ways to, can I generate a post up in the action for my 3-man? Can my guard kick to a wing and then go post up themselves, and we create our space out of that? So I think, the base of it definitely can lend itself to multi-skilling athletes if you think long and hard about it.
I agree. So obviously with your motion principles, your receiver principles, let's go to the NBL level. What sort of percentage of the game defense is throwing you out of your action and forcing you to have to go to the motion principles?
Yeah, so we call our pace component with Melbourne spin. One of the things that one of our assistants will chart is how many times we're in spin, how many times we're in trans, and we'll often do our review that way as well. And I would say in our wins, it's a heavy component on it, and in our losses, it's been when it's been taken out of control. And I guess what that comes down to is, well, often those nights have been also when we're shitty on the defensive end. We haven't been able to generate our stops, or we've been bogged down in different ways. So it's to us, we want to try and get to it pretty consistently. As a general rule, I would say off a miss, we're getting into our spin. Off a made shot, off a miss, we're getting into our spin to trans, to our flow. Off a made shot would be walk-up sets as a default setting in our system and our rules, and that's with whatever team I'm working with. And so you think at the end of that, if you're getting to a 60-40 split on that, it's been a pretty good night.
And just on the side of development, we've got a bunch of wobble coaches here. What would you rank, say, the 3 most important things to developing kids to make it at a high level?
Yeah, it's interesting. I did one of these with Dino United the other week, and I said, my number 1 is shooting. And the examples I've given exactly that. My experiences have said to me, if athletes have the master skill of shooting, and that's not just about making a 3 or being able to make a pull-up jumper, it's contested layup finishes. I go back to that World Cup team with Wani and Luke Travers and Luke Jackson, we missed 2 contested layups against Canada in a game that we lost by 2 points. So that to me, like, contested finishing matters. So being able to score the ball is still, to me, the most important one. Where Dino, his one was, no, it's about playing off the bounce. So again, like, I think whatever the order is, up to you. But to me, it's about 1v1 offense ability is the second one. And then the third one's 1v1 defensive ability. So what I mean by 1v1 offensive ability is the ability for yourself to be able to create your own offense or offense for someone else. To be able to play off the bounce and be able to find the open player passing off the bounce. I don't believe in picking the ball up and slowing ourselves down on it. Being able to make split-second decisions. That one-on-one decision of, well, I've seen my defenders shifted to here. Well, that's the finish that I'm going to make on that. I think that's pretty important. But then equally important is the ability to stay in front of your player without fouling and being able to play as that aggressive defender, being able to use your chest plays, being able to dictate to our push points. So that to me is the order of 3 things that I think are imperative. From a fundamental, though, the fundamentals are the fundamentals of the game. Pass, dribble, shoot. I think they're always going to be as important as each other in that sense.
Thank you. I do have another question just before we get close to finishing, I'd say. The great man that's now our CEO, you've coached against him a few times, and he wants you to tell us what your win-loss record is against Andrew.
I don't even know. What is it? Is it? There you go. I would have said it was probably.
He wouldn't have asked the question if he knew the answer.
if you were in front, he would never have asked that. So.
No, fair enough. You got to have some loaded questions in there.
Yeah.
I had one last one. It's sort of a little bit off topic, but just more on how your mindset changes from a seasonal play like at NBL level to go into tournament play like you do for the under-17s, for example. How does your mindset change, or is it still the same, or is there any differences?
No, there's definitely differences in that. Like the way you go about it's the same. To me, it's still process-driven, whether it's seasonal or whether it's in tournament play. We'd approach review exactly the same way. It's just in a much shorter time. Where my head goes with it is you've just got to have such a greater ability to move on from things a lot quicker. I think, the beauty of a season is, say it doesn't go your way, you're grumpy that night. Like my missus says, you got 24 hours. So by the next morning, like I've got to be in a good space. And that's like a good luxury. We're in tournament play. Like if the result doesn't go your way, that's not the end of your tournament. You've got to be able to find the way to figure out what went wrong, make the change, and then implement it for maybe a total different style of play the next day. So that living in the moment is definitely something that I'm constantly reminding myself, probably a lot more in tournament versus in season. I'd like to think I approach things emotionally the same way. Like, a big thing for me has always been be the opposite to what your team is. So by that, I mean, if your team's seeming really nervous on the night or quiet or within themselves, well, then that's when I feel I've got to have more emotion and more energy and maybe work the sideline a bit more. Whereas when they're hyped up, like, no, tomorrow, that's not going to be good if I'm adding to that. So that's when I want to, just be a little bit more reserved and calm. But that's the biggest challenge in games in a tournament where it's a 7-game season, and you just know that every possession matters so much more in that one. And so just being able to maintain that level of clarity and consistency is definitely a lot more important, in my opinion, than what you might feel in a season.
Yeah, cool. All right, did anybody else have any other extra questions or anything? Anybody? I'm not sure if Nixie's had any more come through.
No.
Oh, Andrew, you have to unmute him at your own risk.
I'll be serious. I just wanted to ask, when it comes to coaching Chris Goulding, who I know you've coached for a while, and, if we liken Chris Goulding to the most talented kid on our junior team, the kid that's probably got a little bit more skill than the others and is a natural scorer and natural ability. I just wanted to ask for some advice on how you sort of harness a Chris Goulding type to play within a system, but also allow him to use his natural talent and ability to just do what he does.
Yeah, it's a good one. Like, I think the first part in answering about Chris is the work ethic gives him a little bit of a license to be who he is. And what I mean by that is when he puts in the work every day. So, for example, post-practice, every day without fail, he's making 10 threes in a row from 7 spots and then 50 made free throws without fail. And there's times where he'll get to number 9, and like I'm rebounding for him every day on this thing. He'll get to number 9, he just hasn't liked how it feels. So he'll deliberately miss number 10 so he gets some extra reps from that spot. So the reason I bring that part up is when you're doing the work to that level, that it gives us the confidence to give him a bit more rope as into some of the shot selection maybe that he may take. But the thing that I would say with Chris is he wants to win probably more than anyone on the floor. So when we're building our game plan for that week, it's pretty easy to have him understand which direction we need to go with some degree of things. But then we also know we've got to put him in as many positions for success as well, because that generates our success. So it's just that fine balance of figuring out kind of what works best from an offensive point of view. The challenge is always around, well, it's a two-way game, and what do you do in that essence and that? So for us, we know that there's teams that will try and pick on him a certain way. So we've got to set up defensive schemes for success for him, and us doing that allows him to then stay in the game longer and provide us what we need at the other end of the floor. The mindset is a beautiful thing with him that, scouting reports, I don't think there's anything he misses on him. The detail and the level he goes to, and something I love to do when I do video review with him is just ask, well, what were you seeing on this play? Because I find that there's a lot of learnings there that sometimes I haven't thought about the why as to why he would do something, versus where I'm like, well, I would have done this. There's a reason he's the player that he is. Dave Barlow's another one like that. It's just a great one to, when you ask them, what were you thinking here? Often you'll get an answer that you sometimes weren't thinking was coming. And it's, when you're working with players at that level, it's pretty easy to help put them in positions of success. Does that answer it, or have I?
Yeah, no, perfect. Yeah, I was just, certainly trying to understand, because, most of us coach junior teams with 1 or 2 talented players, and we heavily rely on them, but it can often, when they aren't at Chris's level, don't have the ability to understand how the team culture and the team fit works. So, was just interested to know how you sort of harness those younger, talented players and still get them to buy in.
And I think something that Dean does a great job of is our culture piece, in that it is athlete driven. And so Chris being our captain is one of the biggest drivers of that. And it took us a while with so many new guys coming in this year to really get that consistency with that. And, probably some would say it took us all year, and we only started to figure it out at the end. But we saw that a lot earlier. And a big part of that is, when it's athlete driven, there's going to be bumps along the way, but when the accountability from your best player is always there, then you end up the lights at the end of the tunnel for sure. And that's been the case with my time with Chris for sure.
Thanks.
No worries.
All righty. Well, if anybody has any other questions and stuff like that, just want to really say massive thanks to Justin for his time and for spreading his knowledge. Some fantastic points that are really raised there. It'll be really useful sort of to filter down to our level as well. But it certainly shows the the IQ required to get to the top level. And I really do appreciate, Justin, your time in helping us out tonight. Really do appreciate it. So hopefully we can get you again sometime in the future. But if not, good luck, mate, and hope you get on the court real soon.
No, appreciate the opportunity, guys, and all the best. And if I can ever help any of you at any time, feel free to pass out my email details, Ryan. Happy to help. So take care and stay safe.